It was really interesting to have a discussion just yesterday with a guy who's from another faith background for sure, and he was talking about some of the things that this community was doing as far as wanting to give and reach out to those who are in need and hungry and needing clothing and care. And he asked, why would you do that? And then before I could even answer, he said, well, I like to do that, but I missed my fast. I missed my whole period of fast, so I got to do some other things to make up for the fact that I didn't fast, and hope that I'm able to do enough stuff to cover over the fact, and he said, please, the big guy, so that he's not mad at me for not fasting. And I just thought, well, and I said to him, I said, well, Christianity doesn't really operate that way. We're doing this because we recognize that God's blessed us, and that God places a responsibility on those he's blessed. To those who have been given much, much is required. We believe that. And so we believe it's our responsibility to give back and to reach out and to extend what we've been blessed with to people that haven't been blessed with as much. And so that's why we do it. But I said, we're not doing it to try to become more lovable to God. I said, I don't believe, as I'm standing here talking to you today, I don't believe that we can do anything that makes us more lovable to God. And he's really, that's how that works. And so then it was interesting because I said, well, the thing that I think is different between your faith and mine is, in the way I believe, is that Jesus is the one that makes us acceptable and lovable to God. And by embracing what Jesus did, we are therefore acceptable and even pure before God. It's not a matter of this big, long list of things we do and this big list of rules that we don't do. That's not what makes us acceptable and lovable. I said, we believe in what Jesus did, and he actually came, and I said that the whole thing with Christmas for us is the fact that he came as a Savior. And I said, where's the Savior figure in your faith, the one that makes up the difference when you're not sure you've done enough good stuff to outweigh the bad stuff? What's the Savior figure in your faith and in your belief? And he goes, don't have one. And I think that's the thing that separates Christianity. Nobody else ever came on the scene in any other religious system and said, I am personally going to take responsibility for all of your sin. Because in every other religious system, you basically figure out how to save yourselves, right? You don't need a savior. You figure out the system. But there's no personal savior. There's no one person that you put your faith and your trust in that secures your eternity for you. Because in all the other systems, you do the best you can. You pray the prayers you're supposed to pray. You do the things you're supposed to do. You follow the rules as closely as you can. You try to be nice and you try to be generous and you try to outdo the bad stuff with the good stuff. And hopefully you make it. I remember talking to one guy of another faith a couple years ago, and I said, well, you know, when you're coming to your last days, what do you do? What are you thinking? What are people wondering about? He goes, we just die hoping we did enough good stuff to outweigh the bad stuff. But as we embrace the Christmas story, we embrace the fact that God said, no, humankind is not capable of saving themselves. They need outside intervention. So if Jesus showed up as the Savior and God sent him into the world as a Savior, if we believe that part, then we have to believe that the world needed saving. And if we believe the world needed saving, we kind of have to believe that we needed saving. So here's the problem. There aren't any other saviors out there. There's nobody else, again, that showed up and said, I will personally take responsibility for your sin. Again, there are a lot of people that will tell you how to live better, how to live more prosperous and successful. There are a lot of people who explain how to get to God, but nobody ever came along and says you need somebody to radically deliver you from the things you can't do yourself, to save you from yourself, and to save you from your own sin. And so Jesus doesn't just end up in a pot with other world religions because he refused to act like other world religious leaders did. He came as a Savior. That was his primary purpose. He came to be yours and my personal Savior. You know, when the angels made their announcement, the one we just read a minute ago to the shepherds that night, they didn't say, for in the town of David there is born to you a ruler, who's Christ the Lord. That's not what they said. They didn't use the word ruler, right? The world had seen a lot of rulers. It's seen a lot of rulers since. Rulers come and go, but he didn't say that. He didn't say, unto you is born this day an example for you to follow. That's not what he said. He didn't say there's this teacher you've got to follow. A very carefully selected word. They repeated the word they'd heard. A Savior has been born. The things that we were to learn about Jesus would indicate that he came to save. But the unique thing of the message that night, and the unique thing that sets Jesus apart, and that sets Christianity, I believe, apart from any other religion, is that when Jesus came, the announcement was not an example, not a consultant, not a coach, not a ruler, not a political figure, but a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. So if we dismiss Jesus, we dismiss our Savior. If we dismiss Jesus, we dismiss any hope for a Savior, because nobody else has ever claimed to be that for us. Well, it's understandable that we would come up with a lot of reasons why we don't like this need, and why, as you talk to people, the idea of needing a Savior isn't that popular, because we're nice people, right? Like most people you talk to, we're nice people. But as nice as we are, we still need a Savior. If you don't believe you need a Savior, ask your spouse. Or ask your kids. Or ask your parents. Or ask your best friend. If you don't think you need saving, ask somebody really close to you to what they think about it. Because really, we don't have to probe too deep when we're really open about ourselves with somebody else before somebody goes, yeah, you know, you actually do need some help. And we're all there, right? We all need that help. We can get only so far in this world if we don't recognize the fact. But there's somebody in your world and in my world that if you were to talk to them about me, after a little while, or maybe not that long, they would say, yeah, you could probably pray for Jim, because he needs some significant help in these specific areas. See, we need help, and that's a context of this world. We need help in the things that we can see now. You know, we need deliverance from some of the stuff we're struggling with and trying to deal with now, let alone this whole concept of eternity. And I think sometimes we figure out, well, yeah, I can't handle everything in my life, and I can't deal with all the stuff here. But I can handle eternity. But if we're getting stuck on things here, you know, some of us need to be saved from anger, right? You know, no matter how many times we apologize to people we keep hurting, we recognize that our anger keeps getting the best of us, and we take people out in that process. We know we're wrong. Nobody has to tell us that we're wrong about that. But that one thing, it just keeps getting us, and we find ourselves running into that wall where I can't stop. For some of us, it's not that. It could be pride, right? We just can't get over that hurt. We can't do anything about that. It just seems to keep showing its ugly face. Maybe some of us, we lie to make ourselves sound better. Maybe it's jealousy or lust, or we're just critical of everybody and everything all the time. No matter how hard we try, we can't make these things go away, right? And if there was some magical button that we could push and it would all be done, we would push that button in a second, because we're tired of how these things affect our lives and hurt the people around us. But we realize when we look at it really honestly, we can't save ourselves. And when we peel away the screen of our lives and get rid of some of the layers and saw what we really looked like, sometimes we realize that we're pretty messed up, aren't we? There's a lot of things that we just seem to struggle, the same struggles over and over again. And part of it's because we've set up this standard of right and wrong. We've created a standard, and it's usually a comparison standard to somebody else that's worse than us. But we've created this standard by which we'll evaluate how good or how bad we are. And we get the 10 Commandments, but 2 or 3 of those are really tough and hard to apply. So let's focus in on 7. And if I can get really good at those 7 and then take some of the, this is what Mom and Dad always taught me, and add them into the list, and then phrases from Ben Franklin or something that should be in the Bible, the good sayings about how you do stuff. And if I can create this scenario where this is what it takes to be a good person, to follow these 7 things and these things from Mom and Dad and these practical things that I've picked up along the way, that if I can mix those things together, then I'll have the context for being a good man or a good woman. But the problem is we come up with any kind of standard, and we can't even live consistent to our own standard that we've created for ourselves. We run up against that all the time. We can't save ourselves in this life. And we think that somehow, sometimes we're going to look at God and say, well, I don't need a Savior as far as eternity goes. I'll save myself. And I think God lets us run into these walls sometimes until one day we wake up and realize, if I can't deliver myself from stuff here, if I can't save myself in this context, if I can't overcome pride and the devastating effect on people around us, I need some divine intervention. I need saving. You know what's interesting? In the Bible, God gave the law in the Old Testament to Jewish people. He gave them the oracles of God. Imagine what that would be like to actually receive from God what his word was and what he wanted them to do. And he chose the Jewish people.
That's the cry of our hearts, Lord. We want to be just like